What is up, college lacrosse fans? This is our sixth episode of the Saturday College Lacrosse Recap Show, where we recap the games, typically from Saturday, but we'll dip into a little bit on Friday, and we'll get into some of the games that are being played today if we end up having the time. As always, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be pinged in your pocket when we put new videos up. We as also just an FYI, we're one-taking these from now on as we work towards putting out a live show every Thursday and every Sunday morning. So bear with us. We're not going to cut things together like we used to. I might ramble a little bit more as I get used to just rambling on, in one shot without taking takes. So let's get into this, though. Lots of games to watch. First game that I wanted to talk about was the game that was nearest and dearest to my heart was Syracuse hosting Hopkins at the Dome. So Syracuse ends up pulling it out. It was a little bit scary. Hopkins, kind of ran the game early, and at halftime, Petramala had warned the Hopkins team that Syracuse is going to come out and go on runs. That's what Syracuse does, is they're a team just that lives off of runs. And he was correct. Syracuse comes out, plays insanely tough. In the second half, they pull out the 14-10 win against their bitter rival at the Dome. Cuse improves to 3-2. Hopkins drops to 2-3. Big story was Jacob Buttermore. Played awesome. Kid sniped some shots from outside. He goes for 3 goals. Peter Dirth, normally a defensive midfielder who's fully capable. I mean, the kid's an offensive talent and came into Syracuse an excellent offensive lacrosse player, but has been relegated to playing defensive midfield and has done an incredible job. He comes out, this year as a captain of the team. And against Hopkins, 2 goals, 1 assist. So that was pretty incredible. Jamie Trimboli factored heavy. He ends up having a really nice shot. His prototypical alley dodge goal, and then he also scored a man-up goal, I believe was his other. He goes 2-1. Brad Voigt has been his usual off-ball self, 2 goals. Brendan Curry, 1-1. Rafis is continuing to look a little bit better, and he's continuing to draw more slides. He goes 1-1, and the list goes on. Another great goal was after, I think it was Buttermore. Somebody gave Syracuse a 1-goal lead. I believe it was Buttermore. And then our boy Brett Kennedy, the long pole, the ginger sensation, he comes down, scores a sniper from outside. The shot was straight fire. He gives Syracuse a 2-goal lead, and then they rolled from there. So that was great. Hopkins was quiet. Their usual suspects didn't factor. I thought that might be the case. One of my keys to this game for Syracuse was if they could control Joey Epstein's dodging and Hopkins' midfield dodging, that they were going to be able to contain Kyle Marr and Cole Williams as well, and they did that. Kyle Marr goes for 2 goals and an assist. Joey Epstein, they held him to 2 goals. Concannon, 2 goals. Forey Smith, a goal and an assist. Keogh, a goal. Cole Williams, just 1 goal. So that was huge in Syracuse's win. Goalkeeping play was solid out of both. Drake Porter goes for 13 saves versus 10 goals against, and Darby, the wee man in cage for Hopkins, he goes for 18 saves, 14 goals against, but both of them 56% save percentage. So excellent goalkeeping out of both teams. It was a ridiculously incredible game to watch, hotly contested. The crowd was into it, so hats off to both teams. But Syracuse, woohoo! The next game we are going to do, I don't have stats for it yet for the players, but I did watch it, and we'll have some highlights that I can show you here. Notre Dame and Denver. Notre Dame gets the huge win. Both teams travel out west. I believe this was supposed to be Denver's home game, and they give up their home game to go out west and play. I know that the officiating was subpar, at least per the coach's demeanor. Corrigan was pretty upset, as was Tierney, through most of the game at the officiating. But the field looked good. The teams looked good. Notre Dame improves to 3-1. Denver drops to 4-2, but 10-7 victory for Notre Dame. That's huge. So they come off a home win against Maryland, which was, I think Maryland was number 2 or 3 at the time. And now here they go on the road, have to play at 10 o'clock in California. Well, yeah, 10 o'clock in California, 10 Eastern, 7 o'clock in California time. And they beat Denver. So, I mean, that's another huge signature win for Notre Dame. And, because I'm a Syracuse homer, what it means for Syracuse is their strength of schedule is just that much tougher for when they beat Notre Dame. all you Notre Dame lovers. Let's see what you say to that. So anyway, great game. The telecast wasn't bad. They streamed it live on YouTube, and that looked good as well. So they did a great job with that game. So hats off to both teams. But Notre Dame, you are playing tight. Brian Costabile, you are playing really good lacrosse. Gleason has been tough for Notre Dame as well. So they're starting to look strong now after that tough loss to Richmond that they had earlier in the year. Next up, Albany hosting Maryland, and this game did not have the feel of these games of past, where the last 2 seasons this has been a hotly contested battle, a hugely anticipated battle. Maryland just handling their business quietly as they have been. They come away with a 14-9 win, so Maryland improves to 6-1 on the season, and Albany drops to 1-4. Listen, Albany's they play a really tough schedule. So, I mean, they've got losses to Syracuse, to Maryland, to Cornell. So, I mean, it's not like these guys are playing cupcakes. 3 of their 4 losses are to quality opponents, and I forget who their 4th loss was, but it wasn't a cupcake either. So, don't count them out. They played without Nanakoke again. 2 things to clarify with Nanakoke. First, he was not apparently suspended last weekend. Albany apparently sat him out as a precaution. Marr said what he said. I think Marr knew what he was doing. I don't think he's going to apologize for what he said in terms of just throwing the NCAA under the bus. But the reality was he wasn't suspended. Once the NCAA was notified, they immediately, pretty much same day, ruled that he was okay to play, and he did play in the next game. I think they played somebody Tuesday. So someone from the NCAA actually hit me up on Twitter to kind of try to correct me on that. So I just wanted to clarify that aspect of it. He didn't play against Maryland yesterday either, and no one knows the real reason. Marr just said it had something to do with a team issue. A reporter from Albany made it sound like he got hit in the face with a ball without his helmet on at practice. He said he witnessed the aftermath and heard the shot, so that might have played also. Who knows? But Maryland played well. Jared Bernhardt starting to find his groove now as this team's number 1. I say that figuratively and literally, being that he's wearing their number 1. They're starting. I think one of the unique things for Bernhardt was trying to figure out where he fit on the field and where he was going to be most effective. Like Kelly, who wore number 1 the year before, he was versatile. He could play out top, he could play at X, and they're starting to try to figure out how to get Bernhardt worked in similar ways with these young guys like Wisnowskis and DeMayo and Fairman, and it's starting to work. The last 2 games he's looked really good. He looked really good against Maryland, and they're mixing it up. They have him behind the cage dodging from X. They have him playing a lot of off ball. They have him dodging from wings and from up top. So he's starting to find his groove. He goes 3-5 on the day, which was incredible. Dubik goes for 3 goals. Wisnowskis 2-2. DeMayo 2-2. Fairman 2-1. So their balanced attack just keeps rolling. Dolan looks solid in cage. He goes 50%, 9 saves, 9 goals against. Albany. Mitch Laffin, he's been playing tough, 3 goals. Jacob Patterson, 2 goals. So with Eccles, a goal and an assist. So without Nanakoke, they're going to have a hard time. But honestly, the 2 games so far that they've played without Nanakoke, they haven't played bad. So let's not throw Albany under the bus yet. They once they get into America East play, that's where they're going to start having shots at trying to get a few wins pulled together in a row. So hats off to Maryland for sure, for once again putting a team away at the end. Albany had got back within 2 goals late, only to have Maryland rattle off 3 or 4 goals in a row to put them out of their misery. So great game by Maryland. Next one, Rutgers, Princeton. I had actually thought Princeton would go go over to Rutgers, in-state rivalry. I figured Princeton would handle them, not by a lot, but I figured Princeton was going to come out with a 4 or 5 goal win. Honestly, I thought their attack would be too much for Rutgers to handle, but Max Edelman stood on his damn head. 18 saves on the day for Edelman against 8 goals against. He was a huge thorn in Princeton's side. Rutgers had what Navy didn't, was a goalie standing on his head trying to keep this game within reach for Rutgers, which he did. Tommy Coyne leads the way for Rutgers, 2 goals and an assist. Adam Charlambides, 2 goals. Kieran Mullins, 1-2. Ryan Gallagher, 1-1. So their balanced scoring continues, and I feel like that's a theme throughout the nation right now in college lacrosse, at the D1 level at least, is that there's no longer just, we are seeing scenarios in which one guy does put up 9 points, as we'll talk about in the Penn State game, but just the depth that all of these teams have. I think that's the big reason that these traditionally mid-level teams are doing so well, is they're finally starting to fill their rosters out, similarly to the Syracuses and the Virginias and the Yales and the Penn States and the Dukes. You see rosters that are just far deeper, so these teams are able to run with these guys a little more. Princeton, Chris Brown, 3 goals. Charlie Durbin, 2-1. Sowers was quiet, 2-1. That's a quiet game for him. Rutgers did an incredible job off ball. Princeton normally is going to scorch teams because of Sowers off ball, and Rutgers did not let them do that. And then when they did get good looks, Adelman stepped up to make huge saves. So Princeton's going to be okay too. They dropped to 2-3, but they're going to get it. Maybe they won't be okay. I say that, but the Ivy League is brutal. Penn's tough. You got Yale, you got Cornell. So they do have to play a lot of quality teams now, and they're going to have to figure something out on the defensive side of the ball. But they are capable of being okay at 2-3. Don't count them out either. They're capable of stringing together 2 or 3 wins in a row. Sorry to be sniffing. I've been battling a cold a little bit here, so you're just going to have to suck that up. Rutgers, though, 4-2, so they're looking solid, and that's going to be rough for the Penn States, the Johns Hopkins, the Marylands, and the Ohio States of the world, having to play another season yet again where Rutgers is going to come into conference play with a winning record and looking very solid with a couple of wins over quality opponents. Next game, High Point, UMBC. Oh my gosh, 17-4. I think it was at the frickin' half. This game, there was no defense to be played in this game. Even Troutner only saved the ball at a 52% clip on the day. So, I mean, even he wasn't his usual self, but there was no goalkeeping pretty much out of UMBC's side. Chris Young for High Point, he breaks the High Point single game goals record by scoring 7 goals in the contest. Ben Baker, he goes for 4-1. Asher Nolting, who contributed heavily in both of their big days and in Baker and Young's big days, he goes 2-5 for 7 points. Dalton Silver goes 1-3. Just once again, High Point proving their depth is key to their success so far. They're sitting at 6-1 and looking nice right now with some quality wins. UMBC, not so much. They're 1-4. So they lose this one 22-13, and it wasn't even that close realistically. Zichelli, whatever his name is, 2-1. Zach Callis, 2-0. Frawley, 2-0. So UMBC, not the toughest opponent High Point's going to play, but man, did High Point make an offensive statement. They not only does Young get the record for goals in a single game, but High Point breaks their record for goals in a single game as a team. I think it was 20 before, and they broke that with 22. Obviously. So great game by High Point. They are proving that they are for real, and don't count them out of anything. If these guys can keep stringing wins together, if they can handle their conference play between Troutner, guys like Young and Baker who are playing really tough, and then you got Asher Nolting, who is this team's pimp. I posit that Troutner could be considered this team's pimp, but maybe they got 2 pimps. Asher Nolting just looks incredible. He's a next level player, and they are really happy to have him running around the field for High Point. We get into the rest of them. There's a bunch of games I'm just going to talk about quick to appease our loyal watchers that want me to talk about more games. Lehi and Army. Lehi gets a solid win over Army. It's the second win for Lehi over a ranked opponent. Connor Gaffney, their face-off guy, he goes 18-23 on the day, winning 70. He's won 70% of his draws on the season, so 18-23 isn't surprising, but it kind of is against a traditionally tough team like Army, who's able to play tough on the wings. So that was huge. Spence for Lehi, he scores his second hat trick of the season also. So that was it was just a hell of a game and a hell of an effort out of Spence, and more importantly out of Gaffney. So Lehi gets that huge win over Army. Ohio State plays Hofstra. I bring Ohio State up because they're interesting. They're right now, Ohio State is sitting at, what are they sitting at here? This is where the live part comes into play, where you have to deal with me trying to figure crap out. I've lost their. Okay, Ohio State's sitting at 6-0, and they haven't played anybody. I say they haven't played anybody, but that's not entirely true. So far, they've got a win over Cleveland State, who's played some pretty solid lacrosse. They got a win over UMass, Boston U, Bucknell, and Marquette. So, I mean, it's not like their wins are over, quality ranked opponents, but their wins have all been semi-convincing. They've controlled those games, and they're against solid opponents. They can score with anyone between Myers, Jasinski, LeClaire, and Reed. I mean, that's an offensive group of monsters right there, and they can fill it up as they need to. Any one of those players is capable of a 5, 6, 7-point game when called upon. And while Myers may be their leading scorer, Jasinski and LeClaire are both All-American caliber talents. So they're still offensively a pick your poison kind of team. Curson and Cage, or Curson and Cage, he's saving the ball at a 59% clip. I expect once they get into Big Ten play, that's going to drop a little bit. But watch out for Ohio State. They're 6-0. They're about to play. A lot of people complain that they're playing a cupcake schedule, but they're about to finish the season off with Denver, Maryland, Hopkins, Penn State, Rutgers, and Michigan over that stretch. So, that's a Notre Dame, I think, is thrown in there also. So don't front on Ohio State. You will see once they get through this. I believe they have up next Denver and Notre Dame as their next two contests. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that we'll see after those two games if they're for real or not. But I posit that they're for real. They just have to be able to get through the remaining part of their schedule, which is fairly brutal. And Penn gets back to their winning ways with a win over, who the hell did Penn play? Where did I lost that one too? Yeah, so Penn gets a victory over Villanova. So Villanova sitting at 3-2 after the loss. Penn was 0-3 coming into this game, but they were very, very quite possibly the toughest 0-3 team in the country is what I would say. I mean, they played Duke and lost to Duke. They lost to Penn State, but they played admirably in both contests. So Penn is a tough team. Sam Handley, he leads them with 4 goals and 3 assists. If I'm not mistaken, he's a freshman, possibly maybe a sophomore, but he's a young kid putting up 7 points, so that's huge. They get a big goal, a big game in Cage out of Reed Junkin. He goes 11 saves versus 11 goals against. And Villanova, led by Connor Kirst, 4-3. So Kirst has a big game as well. Great game. Good to see Penn get in the win column. Once again, they're not happy, Penn isn't, at being 1-3. Going into the Ivy, and I've said it about the other Ivy League teams, they still got to play Yale and Cornell and all sorts of just brutal teams in the Ivy. The Ivy is tough almost all the way through, so they're not happy sitting at 1-3. They're going to have to string some league wins together. But Villanova at 3-2, they're sitting pretty, so they'll be okay, and they'll be able to bounce back from this without much problem. Friday night. I want to do a quick Friday night game. Penn State against Cornell. Penn State, I was surprised. 19-13, they put it on Cornell to a degree. Aseri, he wins 25 draws on the night, so he factors heavily in that trouncing. Realistically, Kobe Canese didn't have a good game at all. So Cornell, when they did have the ball, they were extremely efficient on offense because they had to be. And that's one thing I've been surprised to see is teams like Yale, Penn State that are winning faceoffs at ridiculous rates and just dominating that possession battle. The teams they're playing, being that their offensive possessions have a desperate feel to them, they haven't been folding. They've been exposing the Penn State defense, in this case, the Yale defense, where we need possessions, or we need quality possessions when we do get them because they're few and far between, and then they're shredding those the Penn State Yale defenses in those processes. So Cornell's going to be okay too. Penn State has a couple games on them. Cornell's defense isn't clicking, and Cornell is bad off ball, similar to how Syracuse played last year. So I would expect Penn State to be a really bad matchup for them with a guy like Grant Ament, and Ament goes for 9 assists on the day, which is just kind of silly when you really think about it. And you're just, what are you going to do? You got a guy like Ament just picking people apart on the backside. So hats off to Penn State, though, for getting a huge win, and both of them have to turn around and do it today. Today, Towson is going to end up playing Penn State, and Cornell is going to end up playing Jacksonville. So Cornell, they can get a bounce-back win. Scrap that. See, this is what doing the one take stinks. Cornell plays Towson today, and Penn State gets to play Jacksonville. So Cornell has another really tough test, but Cornell can bounce back if they can handle Towson today. Far better matchup for Cornell, I'm going to say, because like I said, Cornell's bad off ball. Towson is not this feeding crazy team that's going to beat you hitting crease guys on the crease and guys out top on the backside and things like that. So Cornell matches up far better against Towson than they do against a team like Penn State. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare today in that one. But good luck to the Big Red, because I'm a upstate guy, so I have no choice but to root for the Big Red. Towson, they handled their business against Jacksonville to stay 5-0 on Friday night, so they beat Jacksonville 15-13. That's not convincing. I had posited to prove they belong at number one. They were going to need a bigger win than they got over Jacksonville. If they can handle their business against Cornell, they remain number one anyway, so it doesn't matter. If Cornell beats them today, then we see where Towson really stands. I picture Towson not being the number one. They're really not the best team in the country, in my opinion, even though they deserve that number one ranking right now. So they win today. They deserve the number one ranking next week. They lose to Cornell today. We're going to see them drop to 4 to 7, somewhere in that range, which will be deserving. Another game that was interesting that I watched quite a bit of was Cleveland State and Marquette. I was only interested in this game because Cleveland State has played some quality opponents tough, and both them and Marquette are in that same area. Marquette came into the game at 2-2. Cleveland State came in at 2-4, but they had played a tougher schedule than Marquette. So Cleveland State, goes into Marquette. They have to play in that dome, and they come away with a 7-5 win. So Cleveland State's looking legit, and as they start getting into their league play, we may see them pop back up above 500. So Nick Polidoris, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, 2-0. Cleveland State spread their scoring out all up and down their roster. They end up getting a big game out of their goalie, Caleb Espinoza. He goes 6 saves against just 1 goal against, so he played solid. And Chris Rolfing in cage for Marquette. He goes for 9 saves, 4 goals against. It looks like both teams played 2 goalies, though. But it was a good game. It was a cool camera angle. As I showed you highlights, you've probably seen. It was cool camera angle from the dome. A lot of people complained about it. I didn't mind it. I was just glad to be able to watch that weird off-market game that I was interested in.